Yeah, so we were talking about all the very unusual. Now, I've looked back in the past and I cannot see any other time when we had this Pluto-Uranus midpoint on the Aries point. At the same time, two other major planets are having a seriously important conjunction on the Aries point as well. And the Neptune-Saturn conjunction, as you'll see in some of the shorts where I've detailed some of the things, been very important in Russian history, going back to sort of 1812, 1810. And it's also been very important in terms of ideologies and communism. And as we know, so much of what was happening now is driving the whole communist agenda. And when I talk about communism, I'm meaning a planned economy, more control, less choice, less freedoms, the micromanagement of society, and also mixed in with the Maoism, which is getting rid of the olds, which is not the old customs, old religions, old traditions, old people, old ways of thinking, in order to bring in a whole new paradigm. Now, something I heard that was quite interesting, it was on Twitter, Gonzalo Lira, when he was still alive, as you know, he was in Ukraine reporting and unfortunately was murdered by the Zelensky regime, which you won't hear about on the mainstream media, obviously. He was saying that obviously there's a guy called Kolomoisky, a billionaire in Ukraine, and he's the media magnate, and he commissioned this sort of TV show called Man of the People, in which Zelensky plays a starring role, and in the show an ordinary guy becomes prime minister. Now, this particular TV show was really pushed. It got top billing. It wasn't particularly special, but everyone was watching it because, as you know, with TV, if it's being talked about on the talking heads and the reviewers and everything are talking about it, people will watch, etc. Became very popular. It launched Zelensky into people's minds. And the next thing, Kolomoisky, this TV show is called Man of the People. He starts a political party called Man of the People, and Zelensky is the leader of that political party. And the next thing, he's the prime minister. Is this really life imitating art? Or is it that they're doing the predictive programming or revelation of the method through art, which you always got to watch out for what they're doing. So I just thought I'd put that in there as a little bit of interest. Now, if you've watched me before, you know I've talked extensively about the Maidan Revolution, Victoria Nuland, and going back in history with Ukraine, etc., etc. But really, the best thing for everyone in Ukraine, for the sake of Ukrainian people saving their lives as well, which is also vitally important, because with no young men, they're going to do the playbook, what they did with the European countries, particularly France and Germany after World War II. Oh, well, all your men have died. We kind of need mass immigration, and that's going to kind of change our countries forever anyway, so why did we fight the war, kind of thing. Don't want to get into too much of that. You guys know the score. Just wanted to mention something else when we talk about the economy, that the UK now, the whole economy is now, to a large degree, founded on mass immigration. Not only does it suppress wages by constantly bringing in more labor so that there's more competition and that the companies pay people less. It puts upward pressure on rents, which is great for landlords. There's a huge amount of people in this country, including many people who sponsor reform, who invested in property, and that's great for them. So it's great for the property market. It pushes up house prices, which means people continue to feel fairly prosperous and wealthy as house prices go up, and therefore they're more likely to take a loan against their property, against the increase in value, do extensions, build, get new kitchens, whatever. So this also fuels the economy. More people coming into the country, there's more spending, it artificially inflates GDP, it makes the economy look better. And so it's increasing the spending. And what's more, the increase in the immigration has also become an industry. So think around the people who come over the channel. There's reception centres, there's holding centres, there's buses making money, ferrying them to and fro. All the hotels are fully booked all the time. Well, I say all the hotels. A large amount of hotels are fully booked all the time. The government is continually pumping money. The fixtures and fittings in these hotels are continually replaced. These migrants all being catered for in terms of food, cell phones, cigarettes, blah, blah, blah. There's an entire industry around the management of mass immigration of the kind of, should we call it the refugee type, right? When, whether these people are refugees or not has not been determined. But that's become a whole growth industry as well as the property boom, which is also involving bringing more and more people into this country as they've increasingly sold off all the assets. Now, Norway, different to UK, when they discovered North Sea oil in the 70s, Norway made it a state asset, whereas this country sold it off immediately. And now we don't even have that because they're shutting down the whole energy sector, which is going to lead to this decay in terms of infrastructure and identity and control that we're talking about with Neptune Saturn. That's going to cause another huge decimation of large parts of the economy. It contributes to inflation, contributes to the sense that everything is falling apart, which we see so strongly with Neptune Saturn. Okay, there was one. I don't know if there's anything else I wanted to say. Oh yes, the UK Army, it's 74,000 people. Half of those are not really army trained people. They would be support, like the paramedics, the medics, the barbers, the cooks, right? So half of that, and at any one time only 25% of the army is operative. So there really is a very small pool of people, which makes this whole chat about conscription all the more chilling, simply because there really aren't enough people. And as well, when it comes to this whole Ukraine, it's long been a theory, and it's called the Halford-McIntyre geopolitical pivot. And that goes back sort of like, 150 years almost. And they said that in order to control the world, you have to control the world island, which is basically Russia. But the most important part of that world island would be the bit that's Ukraine and the Caucasus there, also Armenia, Georgia, which is why we see increasing amounts of tension and conflict in those areas. And they recently have elections in Georgia and Romania as well, and they didn't like who was selected. So, of course, they had to re-engineer another election and make sure that the person who was elected that they didn't like doesn't get to run again. So they are desperate to control that area, probably because Russia has vast mineral and also water resources, and it was just seen as pivotal. More so today because of the Belt and Road Initiative by China, and sort of at the very corner of that rectangle is also Israel, who want to be on the Belt and Road and may even have a deal with China, which is why they want the alternative Suez Canal built to get through Gaza there. Talking about Trump and his offer to South Africans to come over, particularly farmers, because of what's going on there. Great in one way, I was initially happy, but then the penny kind of dropped. What's happening in Gaza? They want those people gone, so they're going to offer them to be refugees in other countries like Ireland and Sweden, right? So they're going to say to the South African farmers, well, you can come to America, but then who's going to buy that land? The Oppenheimers, the Rissicks, the people who really control South Africa. It's this guy Rissick that's behind Ramaphosa, who set him up in his business, helping him become a billionaire, one of South Africa's richest men. You could almost say that Rissick is the Kolomoisky of South Africa, setting Ramaphosa up just as Zelensky's been set up. So you can see this could also be a play to get people off the land, get the land in the hands of the globalists for their purposes as part of this whole agenda against farming and against moving land into corporate control and moving us onto bugs and stuff like that. So an awful lot going on. I hope you've enjoyed the chat. And one more thing is that people were saying is, now, where I don't agree with David Icke is he's always talking about AI, and you get the people like Whitney Webb and Polly, and they're talking about Palantir and this whole clique of people that are particularly in with Trump, Musk included, and how they are the AI bros, and they always talk about how we're being steered into the super controlled AI future. I take a different view. I think we're more likely to be going into a dark ages because the people who have created the systems, the boomers over the last sort of 40, 50 years are dying off. And what's dying off with them is a lot of knowledge and ability, right? And we're increasingly we're not replacing like with like. So we can't compare the huge growth in technology, whatever we've had in the last 80 years, and project that forward. It's more likely there's going to be a decline. And what with the whole infrastructure decay, the net zero, I mean, just what we see in South Africa with infrastructure decay is beginning to be noticeable in England as well, and I'm sure in parts of America, meaning that there's not going to be much purpose for all this high-tech AI. It will even maybe be impossible for it to be maintained or run, given the less availability or reliability of electricity. So as basic functions break down and just basic survival becomes more of a problem because of the huge weight on the whole system, it's less likely they can maintain all this AI stuff. So it's more likely we are slipping back into a dark ages rather than going forward into some super technocratic AI world of super control. And I think that's where Eichen are putting people worried about that, when